Number 3 on the QR code review wants us to find the domain for each of the following. So this first one is a little bit tricky because we see that we have a square root. So you want to set everything under the square root, which in this case would be 25 minus x squared. You want that to be greater than or equal to 0 since you have a square root function and we're not allowed to take square roots of negative numbers. This is the difference of two squares. This is 5 minus x times 5 plus x. And that still needs to be greater than or equal to 0. So if I go ahead real quick and find my zeros, I would see from here that x would equal 5, and from here that x would equal negative 5. So if I consider for a moment the number line, and this would be negative 5, and this would be 5, I can see I got like 3 different areas here that I could test. So I want to test like a number to the left of here, like negative 10. I'll test a number in the 0 or in the middle, like 1, and then I'll test a number to the right, like positive 10, and I'll plug these into my function and see whether or not they create a number that's greater than or equal to 0. So if I plug negative 10 in for this, negative 10 right there would be, this would be a positive number multiplied by a negative number, because 5 minus 10, and we all know that a positive times a negative is negative. If I put a 1 right here, 5 minus 1 is a positive number, and 5 plus 1 is also a positive number, so a positive times a positive, of course, is a positive number. How about 10? 5 minus 10 is a negative number, and then 5 plus 10 is a positive number. So if I multiply those two together, of course, I would get a negative. So the only area on my little number line here that is a positive number is in between negative 5 and 5. So therefore, the domain would be all real numbers x such that negative 5 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 5. That one's a little bit tricky, requires a little bit of analysis, but that's how you do it. The second one here, part B, well, this is just a line, so this is a linear function. So all lines have a domain of all real numbers. That doesn't really, you don't have to do anything else with that one. This is a rational function, so you want to make sure the denominator is never a 0. So you have to ask yourself what number would create a 0 in the denominator. So just take your denominator and set it equal to 0 and solve. So I would get 2x would be negative 3, so x would be negative 3 halves. So therefore, you would say the domain of f is all real numbers x as long as x does not equal negative 3 halves. Set notation because there are an infinite number of answers for that. And then the last one is also a rational function. It says x over x squared minus x minus 6. So again, you want to make sure that nothing in your denominator is equal to 0. So go ahead and factor that if you can. So let's see here. Hopefully this will factor for us. Maybe x and x, probably a 2 and a 3. Trying to get a negative and then a positive. There you go. So that'll work out for you. So x would be negative 2 or x would be 3. So therefore you would represent your domain as all real numbers x such that x does not equal negative 2 or 3. All right, that's how you do number 3 on the QR code review.